My name's Leah Monroe. I'm 35, an Army logistics officer stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia. I've been deployed twice, planned convoys in Afghanistan, and somehow still can't get my sister to text me back unless she needs something. That should tell you everything about my family dynamic before I even start. Last month, on a Tuesday so boring, I remember the smell of burnt coffee in the office. I found out I'd won the Georgia State Lottery. $49 million, after taxes. The kind of number that doesn't feel real at first. I was sitting in my dented Ford pickup, scrolling through my phone between base paperwork and my night shift at the local hardware store when the app flashed. Congratulations, you've won. I just stared at it. No screaming, no crying, none of that movie stuff. I just locked the phone, looked straight ahead and thought, well, that's new. Years in the Army will train you to stay calm even when the world explodes. I guess that includes when you suddenly get rich. Then my phone buzzed again. It was from my sister, April. Hey, Leah, any chance you can send me a few hundred? Caleb's truck broke down and we're short till Friday. Of course. The timing was perfect. I looked at that text, then back at the lottery notification. One message worth millions, the other worth nothing. That's when the idea started forming, the quiet kind of thought that sneaks up on you and refuses to leave. I didn't reply. I just turned the key, drove home to my one-bedroom rental, and sat there staring at the peeling paint on the wall. My sister and I weren't enemies. Not exactly. But ever since Dad passed, she's acted like I was the family ATM. I paid for Mom's prescriptions, helped with Caleb's bills, and somehow April always had a reason why this time was special. So I thought, what happens if I stop being the one who fixes everything? The next day, I did something that would make my financial advisor faint. I drove to Atlanta, hired a quiet, sharp attorney named Mr. Douglas Reed, retired JAG. Silver hair, eyes that miss nothing. He helped me set up a private trust under a different name, the kind used by people who own yachts or companies they never visit. My real identity disappeared behind a wall of paperwork. Douglas congratulated me with the calm of a man who's seen every kind of human nonsense money can buy. When I got home that night, my house looked smaller, like it knew a secret it couldn't hold. I still went for my 0500 run, still checked in at the base, still did my job like nothing changed. Because for now, it hadn't. What did change was the way I started seeing everyone around me. My mother, Ruth, called later that week, asking if I'd be home for Sunday dinner. That was normal. Sunday dinners were sacred in our house: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and polite arguments about who ruined what. But this time, I said yes with a purpose. If you've ever served, you know a test isn't about what someone says, it's about what they do under pressure. I'd been testing soldiers for years. Now I was about to test my own family. That Sunday, I drove up to Mom's place, a modest two-story in Columbus that hadn't been painted since Dad was alive. The porch sagged just a little, and the American flag hanging by the door was faded from too many summers. Inside, it smelled like every Sunday of my childhood: fried food, furniture polish, and a hint of stress. April was already there, dressed like she was going to brunch with a senator instead of eating in Mom's kitchen. Her husband, Caleb, was talking too loud about a business opportunity that sounded like a pyramid scheme with extra steps. Mom was stirring gravy like it owed her money. "Leah, look at you," Mom said, giving me that smile that only shows up when she needs something. "Still wearing those army boots, huh?" "Yeah," I said, setting down the casserole I'd brought. "They keep me grounded." Dinner went about as smooth as you'd expect until I cleared my throat. "Hey, so, I need to tell you guys something." They all looked at me like I'd just pulled a pin from a grenade. "I'm kind of in trouble," I said. "My landlord's raising the rent, and I had some unexpected repairs on my truck. I just need $2,000 to hold me over." Caleb let out a short laugh. "You? You're the Army one. Don't they pay you enough for all that marching?" April smirked into her wine glass. "Leah, are you serious? 2,000? You've always been so responsible." Mom sighed, shaking her head. "Honey, you've got to stop living paycheck to paycheck. You're too old for that." Oh, it was almost funny, hearing them all give advice like a panel of experts. I kept my voice steady. "I'm serious, Mom. I just need a short loan. I'll pay it back next month." Mom served herself more mashed potatoes. "Well, I'd help if I could, but things are tight. You know the cost of groceries these days. April shrugged. We just bought a new fridge. Caleb's truck is still in the shop. Maybe next time? And that was that. Conversation moved on like I hadn't said a word. Football scores, weather, whatever. I sat there, nodding, smiling when appropriate, memorizing every tone of voice, every excuse. After dinner, Caleb went outside to smoke, and April followed, probably to make sure he didn't text his business partner. I helped Mom with the dishes. She was quiet, but not the good kind. You know, Leah, she said finally, your sister's doing her best. She's got a lot on her plate. So do I said. Mom gave me that look, the one that means she's done with the conversation but still wants to win it. You've always been independent. You'll figure it out. You always do. That was her way of saying don't expect help. I drove back to base that night without turning on the radio. Just silence. That clear, empty kind that fills every space until it becomes heavy. I wasn't sad. I was certain. They'd all failed the test, faster than I expected. But here's the thing about discipline. You don't move without a plan. I wasn't about to throw a tantrum or flaunt the money. That's not my style. I was going to handle this the way I'd handle any mission, quietly, strategically, one step at a time. Back in my apartment, I sat down with my notebook and wrote 3 names. Mom, April, Caleb. Underneath, I wrote 2 words: observe and execute. Then I opened my laptop and started researching. Property records, debt databases, business registrations. You'd be surprised how much you can find out about people when you stop being their safety net. Turns out, Caleb had a few business ventures in his name, all with negative balances. April had 2 credit cards maxed out and a personal loan in default. Mom had a reverse mortgage she never told me about. I leaned back in my chair. So that's what family loyalty looked like on paper. The next morning, I showed up to base early, like always. My CO noticed nothing different. Nobody did. I went through briefings, signed off on reports, ran inventory checks, but under the calm routine, the gears were already turning. Every soldier knows. When the enemy underestimates you, that's when you win. And right now, my family had no idea a war had already started, quiet, invisible, and absolutely personal. They just didn't know who the general was yet. I didn't sleep much that night. By morning, the notebook was still open on my kitchen table, and my coffee had gone cold. The page with their names stared back at me like a report after a failed drill. I shut it, tucked it into my duffel, and decided it was time to see just how deep their mess really went. Before my shift, I stopped by the bank. Not my regular one, the private branch my lawyer had recommended. I'd never been inside a place like that before. Everyone spoke in low voices, and the coffee in the lobby probably cost more than my weekly groceries. The manager called me Miss Monroe with the kind of respect I'd only ever gotten from soldiers who outranked me. We set up a new account, new card, new name for the trust. Everything clean, quiet, invisible. On my way out, I passed a young couple arguing at the counter about overdraft fees. The guy slammed his hand on the desk, yelling about unfair charges. The woman kept saying, "It's just $20. I remember thinking that not long ago, I was that woman counting 20s, arguing over scraps, never realizing how little those fights mattered. Back on base, I went through my routine. Workouts, inventory, reports. But between tasks, I kept checking my phone. Nothing from April, no apology, no concern. Just a new Instagram story, her at brunch, laughing, a mimosa in one hand, a caption that said, "Some people just don't know how to plan their lives." I didn't even get angry. That's the thing about clarity, it replaces emotion with precision. I scrolled past the picture, saved it in my mental folder labeled evidence of stupidity, and went back to work. That weekend, Mom called again. "We're doing dinner again Sunday," she said, like it was an order. "And don't bring any attitude this time. Everyone's been stressed." "Sure," I said, "I'll be there." But this time, I wasn't going as Leah the soldier or Leah the broke sister. I was going as Leah the strategist. When I pulled into Mom's driveway Sunday evening, the lights were already on. Music came from the living room, old Motown, her favorite. I took a deep breath before walking in. Caleb's voice hit me first. "Man," I told her, "if we can flip that property, we'll double it in 6 months easy," he said, like a man who'd watched one too many self-help videos. April's laughter followed, high and sharp. You just need someone to believe in you, babe. I stepped into the kitchen. Mom gave me a half smile. There you are. Grab a plate before it gets cold. I looked at the spread fried chicken, macaroni, biscuits, the usual. It all smelled like nostalgia and guilt. I filled a plate and sat across from April. She barely looked up from her phone. So, did you figure out your money problem? She asked casually, like we were discussing the weather. Not yet, I said. Still waiting on some things to come through. April nodded, pretending to care. Well, don't feel bad. Money's tight for everyone right now. You just have to manage better. I wanted to laugh. My sister, the woman who once financed a beach trip on a payday loan, lecturing me about money. Instead, I smiled. Good advice. Mom jumped in. April's right, Leah. You've always been too proud to ask for help early. That's why you get yourself in these jams. Like the last one I got myself into? I asked quietly. Mom frowned. Don't start. Caleb took a sip of beer. You know, I heard the base pays bonuses if you re-up for another deployment. You ever think about that? Easy money. Yeah, I said. It's easy money if you don't mind getting shot at. Oh. The room went quiet for a second. Caleb looked away. April rolled her eyes. Mom sighed. No one's saying that, Leah. But you can't expect everyone to drop what they're doing to help. I leaned back, studying them. The same faces I'd known all my life, but now I saw them differently, like reading the fine print on a bad contract. Dinner carried on in fake normalcy. Caleb bragged about some investment opportunity. April complained about her coworker. Mom nodded through all of it. When I finished my food, I stood up to clear my plate. Leave it, Mom said. You never sit and relax. I set the plate down, but not because I was relaxing. I was watching. April's new bracelet, a small gold chain, caught the light. It wasn't cheap. Her nails were fresh, too. Caleb's broken truck apparently hadn't stopped them from hitting the salon. Looks nice, I said. New jewelry? April smiled, twisting her wrist so it shimmered. Yeah, birthday gift from Caleb. He's so thoughtful. End of tea. Caleb grinned like he'd just landed a promotion. She deserves it, been through a lot lately. I nodded, smiling back. That's sweet. Real family takes care of each other. Mom looked up, maybe catching the edge in my tone, but she didn't say anything. After dinner, I stepped out on the porch. The night air felt heavy, and the streetlights flickered like they were trying to stay awake. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, the small one tied to my old account. I transferred $500 into my sister's account. A test within a test. 5 minutes later, a text popped up. What's this for? Just paying you back for the times you helped me, I replied. No answer. But I saw her read it. 2 days later, I got another text, this time from Mom. Heard you sent April money. That was nice. You know, your cousin Trevor's behind on his mortgage. Maybe you could help him too? That's when I knew the leak was intentional. April had told her, of course. The money didn't change anything, it just confirmed the rule. In my family, kindness was weakness. By Friday, the house of cards started shaking. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a property management office in Auburn. The woman sounded nervous. Hi, Miss Monroe. I'm calling about your mother's cosign on the Jefferson Street property. We haven't received payment in 3 months. Lou. I sat there at my desk holding the phone like it was a grenade. I'm sorry, what? Yes, ma'am. It's listed under Ruth Monroe and April Kennedy. Looks like it was purchased last year, maybe an investment rental? Of course. Of course they'd used Mom's credit. April couldn't qualify for a toaster, let alone a house. Send me the statement, I said. That evening, I drove to Mom's house unannounced. She opened the door in her robe, eyes wide. Leah, what on earth? Who co-signed a house with April? I asked. Her face flushed. It's not what you think. She said it was a good investment. She promised to handle the payments. And you believed her? She crossed her arms. She's my daughter. I'm your daughter too, I said. She didn't answer. April's car wasn't there, but her handbag was on the counter. I picked it up and found the same property management letter I'd just gotten. She'd been hiding it for weeks. I set it down. Mom, they're going to take your house next if this goes south. Don't talk to me like I'm stupid, she snapped. I took a slow breath. I'm not. I'm talking to you like someone who just doesn't want to watch her family drown. Her jaw tightened. You think you know everything because you wear a uniform, but this is family, we help each other. Do we? I said softly. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then her phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up with a text from April. Did she find out yet? Mom reached for it, but I was faster. I read the message, then looked at her. Guess that answers my question. She started to speak, but I was already walking out the door. I didn't slam it, I just closed it behind me quietly, the way you end a briefing when you already know the mission's changed. The night was cool. I stood beside my truck, watching the porch light flicker. Somewhere inside, Mom's voice rose in anger, muffled through the walls. But I wasn't listening anymore. My phone buzzed again, April this time. We need to talk. I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen, then slid the phone back into my pocket. Some conversations need to happen face to face. And when they do, you better be the one holding the truth. The next morning, I drove without turning on the radio. The sun wasn't even up yet, but I needed the quiet. My head was too loud. Every conversation from last night replayed itself like bad audio, on a loop. April's smirk, Mom's excuses, that damn text message. I stopped at a diner just off Highway 80, the kind of place with sticky counters and old men arguing about college football. The waitress poured me coffee without asking, and I sat there, watching the steam rise and thinking about how fast people show you who they really are when money's not involved or when they think you don't have any. I pulled out my notebook and wrote down 2 words. Test everyone. If I was going to see who cared, I needed to go all the way. First on the list was Uncle Raymond, Mom's brother. He was the family's moral compass back when Dad was alive, always lecturing about doing right and keeping the family strong. Last time we talked, he'd borrowed $500 to fix his truck and somehow still hadn't fixed it or paid me back. I called him. Hey, Uncle Ray, it's Leah. Leah. Hey, kiddo, how's the army treating you? It's fine, I said. Actually, I could use some help. I'm in a tight spot. You think you could lend me a few hundred till next month? Silence. Then a short laugh. Oh, sweetheart, I wish I could, but things are tough. You know how it is. I'm still paying off that roof. That same roof he'd mentioned 2 years ago. Yeah, I said. Don't worry about it. Hope it holds up. We hung up, and I wrote 1 word next to his name. Failed. The second test was my cousin Melissa. She's a nurse in Alabama, always posting Bible verses about kindness and love. I texted her the same story. Car trouble, rent late, just need a hand. She replied instantly. Oh no, girl, I'll pray for you. Prayer. The cheapest currency in America. I put my phone down and muttered, guess faith doesn't pay bills. But not everyone failed. Later that week, I called an old friend from my deployment, Mike Daniels, now running security for a construction company in Tennessee. We hadn't talked in over a year. When he picked up, his voice was the same, steady, like gravel. Monroe? Damn, haven't heard from you in a while. What's up? I told him the same story. He didn't hesitate. Text me your account, I'll send something tonight. I tried to protest, but he cut me off. Don't argue, you've had my back before. This ain't a big deal. I know, Pete. That night I checked my account. $500. No questions asked. I sat there staring at the screen for a long time. It wasn't about the money, it was the principle. Out of everyone, the only one who stepped up was someone I hadn't seen in years, a guy who'd shared MREs and firefights but not blood. I sent him a simple message. Thanks, brother. He replied, always, Captain. It hit me then blood doesn't define loyalty. Shared struggle does. The next morning, I stopped by Mom's again. The same porch, the same sagging flag. She opened the door wearing a robe and surprise on her face. Leah, what are you doing here? I brought coffee, I said, holding up 2 cups. Thought we could talk. We sat at the kitchen table. The place looked tired. So did she. Bills stacked by the microwave, half-open envelopes everywhere. Mom, I know about the Auburn property, I said quietly. She froze, then set down her cup. April promised she'd handle it. She didn't. I was trying to help her. She said it was a smart investment. I leaned back. You didn't check anything? Didn't ask how she was paying? She frowned. Why do you sound like a cop? Because someone has to. I said. She looked away. You've always judged her. She's trying, Leah. Not everyone's like you. I don't need everyone to be like me, I said. Just honest. She didn't respond. I finished my coffee, stood up, and dropped an envelope on the table. That'll cover the next 2 payments, don't ask how. She blinked. Leah, just keep it quiet, I said. And please, stop signing anything April gives you. I left before she could answer. That afternoon I visited Dad's grave. It's just a small marker at a quiet cemetery, nothing fancy. The grass was yellow around it. I brushed off the dirt and stood there, arms crossed. You'd hate this, I said out loud. You'd say, don't test family, you either love them or you don't. I sighed. But you never saw what they became after you died? The wind picked up. It didn't feel like an answer, but maybe that was the point. On the way back, I stopped at a grocery store to grab a few things. Near the exit, an old man was sitting by the carts with a cardboard sign that said, Need help veteran. I didn't even think. I handed him a 20. He looked up, surprised. You sure, ma'am? Yeah, I said. Just pass it on if you can. He smiled, showing a few missing teeth. You got it. I walked out feeling something I hadn't in weeks light. That night, April called again. Her voice was sharp, impatient. Why did you go to Mom's? She said you were asking questions. I was checking on her, I said. She's your mother too, remember? You don't need to act like some hero, she snapped. I've got everything under control. Really? Then why is the Auburn property behind on payments? Silence. Then a shaky laugh. Oh, so now you're snooping through my stuff? Just watching the fallout, I said. She scoffed. You always think you're better than us. No, I said. I just think differently. She hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, and realized how final that silence felt. Not angry, just empty, like something that had already died. Later that week, I got a handwritten note in my mailbox. No return address, just my name. Inside was a short message. I'm sorry, but I can't help you. I'm barely managing myself. Love, Uncle Ray. I smiled. He'd written it on the back of a church bulletin. Classic. I folded it neatly and slid it into my notebook under his name. Failed had never looked so permanent. But something else was happening. The more I tested them, the calmer I felt. Like I'd finally stopped fighting a losing battle. For once, I wasn't the one cleaning up their chaos. I was just watching it unfold. A few days later, I got another call, this one from Mike. Hey, Captain, just checking in. You good? Yeah, I said. Actually, I am. He laughed. Don't sound so surprised. You always land on your feet. Maybe, I said. But this time, I'm learning who's worth standing next to. Fair enough. You know where to find me if you need backup. I thanked him, hung up, and looked around my apartment. Everything felt different now, same walls, same furniture, but quieter, more controlled. That night, I made a list of everyone who'd failed. Then, for the first time, I drew a line between test and revenge. It wasn't about payback in the dramatic sense. It was about balance, correction. By the time I finished, it was past midnight. I closed the notebook, poured myself a drink, and sat by the window. Outside, the city lights shimmered like they were trying too hard. Somewhere out there, April was probably planning her next investment. Mom was probably making excuses. The rest of them were probably sleeping fine. But the game had already changed, and they just hadn't realized it yet. Because the real test wasn't about who'd help me, it was about who'd need my help next. And when that moment came, I'd be ready. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, heart still racing like I'd run a mile in my sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my boots. Every time I thought about my family now, it felt like tightening a tourniquet, necessary but painful. I needed air, something that didn't smell like betrayal. On impulse, I drove east toward my old neighborhood. It had been years since I'd gone back. The streets looked smaller, like someone had folded the whole place in half. The corner store where I used to buy candy as a kid was now a vape shop. Same sign, different poison. But the old house at the end of Oak Ridge Lane was still there, peeling paint, sagging porch, and the same hand-painted mailbox that said Williams. Mrs. Dorothy Williams had been our neighbor since I was 6. She used to babysit me when Mom was working late shifts, which was pretty much always. I hadn't seen her since before my last deployment. Her screen door creaked open before I even knocked. "Well, if it isn't my soldier girl," she said, her voice still warm enough to melt asphalt. I smiled for the first time in days. "Hey, Mrs. Dorothy, you haven't changed a bit." "Liar," she said, laughing as she waved me inside. "My knees are gone, my hair's half white, and I can't eat bacon without my doctor sending me to hell and back. Sit down before I change my mind." The house smelled like lemon cleaner and cornbread. Same as always. She poured us sweet tea and sat across from me, studying my face like she was reading an old letter. "You look tired," she said. "And don't tell me it's just the army. That uniform doesn't make your eyes that sad." I tried to deflect with a smile. "Guess I've just been busy." She nodded slowly. "Busy's just another word for hiding, honey." That hit harder than I expected. I took a sip of tea to stall. "Things with my family have been complicated." "Ain't they always?" she said with a chuckle. "That's what makes them family." I told her a little, not everything, just enough. I said my sister wasn't around much anymore, that Mom and I had drifted apart, that people had shown their true colors. She listened without interrupting, like she always did when I was a kid, ranting about school bullies. When I mentioned money problems, she stood up immediately. "Wait here," she said, shuffling down the hall. I started to protest. "Mrs. Dorothy, don't argue with old people," she called back. She returned with a wrinkled envelope and placed it in front of me. "Here, I got a little tucked away from my husband's pension. You take this." I froze. "Mrs. Dorothy, no. I can't take your money." She waved her hand like I was talking nonsense. "You can and you will. You helped me fix my gutters after that storm 5 years ago. You didn't ask for anything then. This is me paying you back." I tried again. "I'm fine. Really." She gave me that look, the kind only old Southern women can pull off. Equal parts love and command. "Leah Monroe, don't insult me. Family's not just who shares your blood. It's who shows up when you need a place to sit." That line just stopped me cold. I'd spent weeks watching people fail tests they didn't even know they were taking, and here she was, no questions, no hesitation, no angle. She slid the envelope closer. I didn't even want to look inside, but curiosity got the better of me. $400. Probably a month of her groceries. My throat tightened. "You can't afford this." Maybe not," she said, smiling, "but I can afford to care." I couldn't talk after that. I just sat there, nodding, trying not to let it show how much that simple kindness wrecked me. We spent the rest of the afternoon catching up her doctor appointments, my deployments, the neighbor's dog that wouldn't stop barking, normal things, human things. I'd forgotten what that sounded like. When I left, she hugged me so tight my ribs protested. "Don't be a stranger, soldier girl," she said. "The world's full of takers. Don't let 'em make you one too." The drive back felt lighter somehow. The air, the road, even the radio static, all of it had a pulse again. I pulled into my apartment lot, parked, and just sat there for a minute. For the first time since I won the lottery, I didn't feel alone. That night, I pulled out my notebook and turned to the page that said tests. Underneath all the names and notes, I wrote a new one. Dorothy Williams, passed. Then, without really thinking, I drew a box around it. Not a neat one, just something to make it stand out. I stared at it until my eyes blurred. Maybe I was tired, maybe I was something else. I thought about all the people who'd failed, the excuses, the silence, the fake sympathy, and then about her. Old woman, bad knees, fixed income, handing me everything she had because she remembered who I was, not what I owned. It was almost embarrassing how simple it was. Kindness didn't need to be big. It just had to be real. Later that week, I went by the hardware store where I used to work part-time. My boss, Rick, still had the same coffee-stained cap and half-broken stool. "Well, if it ain't my favorite soldier," he said. "You back to work, or just slumming it with us mortals?" "Neither," I said. "Just passing through." He chuckled. "You're too good for this dump now, huh?" "Not too good," I said. "Just done pretending it's the only place that makes sense." End of fall. We talked a bit, nothing deep, just weather and football. But when I left, I slipped $1,000 in cash into the register drawer. I didn't say a word. Rick would find it later and argue with the cameras about who left it. That thought made me grin. By the time I got home, I'd made up my mind. Testing people wasn't enough anymore. I'd already seen who they were. The real question now was, What was I going to do about it? That night, I logged into my trust account. The balance sat there, untouched, still surreal. I scrolled past it and opened a new document labeled Mission 2. At the top, I wrote, Truth through action. Then I started mapping out what I knew: Mom's house, April's debts, the Auburn property. I highlighted everything in red that tied them together. It looked like a spider web, and every thread led back to April. I sat back, exhaled, and took a sip of whiskey. Somewhere between the burn and the silence, a thought settled in. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control: who had it, who abused it, who deserved it. Mrs. Dorothy gave me faith that some people still cared. Now it was time to find out how far the others were willing to go when they thought I didn't. I closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and stared out the window. The city hummed quietly, unaware that a war was brewing behind one apartment's glass. And I wasn't on defense anymore. The next week, I was back on base when I got a voicemail from Mom. Her voice sounded overly cheerful, the kind she used when she wanted something. Leah, honey, we were thinking about selling the old house in Macon. It's just too much for me to manage. Maybe you could stop by this weekend and talk about it. Love you. I knew that tone. When she said we, she always meant April. I waited until the end of the day before calling her back. You sure you want to sell? I asked. That house is all that's left of Dad. Oh, I know, but it's falling apart. April's been talking to a realtor. Her boyfriend knows someone who might buy it. They could help us handle the paperwork. Handle, I repeated. That's a good word for it. Mom laughed softly, like I'd said something cute. You've always been so suspicious, Leah. You should have a little more faith in family. Faith. That word was losing value faster than crypto. By Friday night, I was sitting across from my lawyer, Douglas Reed, at a quiet steakhouse in Atlanta. He'd already read the file I sent him, copies of the property deed, Mom's mortgage, and a few text screenshots between April and Mom that looked a lot like manipulation. He tapped his pen on the folder. Your sister and her boyfriend are trying to move the property through a private sale. If your mother signs, it'll look legitimate. Once it's transferred, they can flip it to an LLC and take most of the profit before you even know what happened. Can we stop it? He nodded. Legally, yes. But you'd look like the bad guy if you did it now. My advice? Let them move forward. We document everything. I raised an eyebrow. So you're saying we played dumb? He smiled. I'm saying we let them think you are. That night, I drove to Macon. The house looked the same, Dad's old tools still hanging in the garage, the porch light still flickering. I knocked twice before Mom opened the door. Oh, you made it, she said. April's inside. We're just going over the paperwork. Perfect. April was sitting at the dining table, dressed like a corporate intern, tapping on her tablet. Her boyfriend, Cliff, looked like every smooth-talking investor you'd find in a Florida timeshare ad tan, smug, and wearing sunglasses indoors. Leah, April said, smiling wide. So glad you could join us. We've got a great offer on the house, $180,000. Cash. I sat down across from her. That's about a third of what it's worth. She waved a manicured hand. The market's weird right now. It's better to take the deal while we can. Cliff leaned forward. Look, Leah, I've been in real estate a long time. Trust me, this is a solid move. I looked at him for a long second. You've been in real estate for what, 3 months? His smile flickered. 6. April rolled her eyes. Leah, you always have to challenge everything. This isn't the army. We're trying to help Mom simplify things. Help, I said, by selling Dad's house for pennies. April sighed. We'll split it evenly. You'll get your third. But if you want to make it easier, you can just sign over your share and I'll send you $20,000 right now. No taxes, no headaches. I looked at Mom. She avoided my eyes. So, that was their plan. Bait me with cash, hide the real numbers, and take the house cleanly. Not a scam for strangers, but one for family. I smiled. That's generous. April brightened. See, I told you she'd be reasonable. Reasonable's my middle name, I said. Send the papers. I'll take a look. Cliff reached across the table with a firm handshake. Glad we're on the same page. I shook his hand and noticed the Rolex on his wrist. It was either fake, or he was worse at hiding money than he thought. Driving back that night, I didn't feel angry. I felt focused. They thought they'd fooled me. That was fine. I wanted them to. I called Douglas first thing the next morning. They've set up the meeting. They want me to sign the papers next week. Good, he said. Wear something nice and record everything. Georgia's a one-party consent state. You can legally tape them if you're part of the conversation. Got it. Dan. He hesitated before hanging up. Leah, just remember this isn't war. Keep it clean. Trust me, I said. It's cleaner than they deserve. For the next few days, I went through my normal schedule, quiet and steady. Nobody on base knew a thing. At night, I reviewed every document, every text. The pattern was clear. April handled Mom like a puppet. Cliff handled April like a wallet. They deserved each other. Friday came fast. I met them at a small office in Savannah. The realtor was really just Cliff's friend with a printer. The room smelled like cheap air freshener and bad ideas. April smiled like a politician. Here we are, just sign here, and we'll wire your cut. I flipped through the pages, scanning the fine print. They'd buried a clause transferring full ownership to AKC Holdings LLC, Cliff's initials. It was almost elegant in its stupidity. Everything looks fine, I said, pulling out my pen. You got a witness? Cliff nodded to the assistant. That's Janelle. She'll sign for us. I glanced at her, probably 20, trying not to look nervous. I smiled to ease her nerves. You ever see a family work this well together? She didn't answer. Smart girl. I signed the papers, shaking hands again, my watch quietly recording every word. When it was done, April hugged me like we'd just made peace. I'm proud of you, she said. That was the moment I knew she was gone. Whatever part of her had once been my sister had drowned in greed a long time ago. After they left, I sat in my truck, replaying the audio. Every line was there, April pushing, Cliff coaching, Mom silent. Enough to show intent, manipulation, fraud. I emailed the file to Douglas, who replied within minutes. Perfect. Keep everything secure. Do not engage further. That night, I drove home under a sky full of quiet stars. The road stretched ahead, like a long, patient breath. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting. I was executing. When I got home, I poured a drink and sat by the window again. The neighborhood was still, the kind of silence that only happens before something breaks. I thought about Mrs. Dorothy, about the envelope she'd given me, about how pure her kindness was compared to what I'd seen this week. The contrast was so sharp it almost made me laugh. One woman with almost nothing gave everything without hesitation. My family, with every chance in the world, would sell each other for scraps. I set my glass down, opened my laptop, and started labeling the recordings. Phase 1, compliance. There'd be no shouting, no threats. Just truth, neatly documented, quietly delivered. I closed the laptop, leaned back in the chair, and let the quiet fill the room. The air outside was still warm, but the breeze through the cracked window felt cooler than it had in weeks. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once, then stopped. And for a moment, it felt like everything in the world was holding its breath with me. The following week, the papers cleared without a hiccup. April texted me a fake thank you message, full of smiley faces and hollow affection. You made the right call, Leah. I'll wire your share soon. Cliff's handling the sale paperwork. I stared at the text and felt nothing. They thought I'd stepped out of the picture. That was the beauty of it. Everyone relaxes when they think they've already won. At dawn, I ran 5 miles on base before reporting in for equipment checks. My body knew what to do, even when my mind was elsewhere. Routine is a soldier's shield. It keeps you steady when the world doesn't deserve it. By the afternoon, I was back in Atlanta meeting Douglas in his office. He looked up from the folder he'd been reviewing and smiled faintly. You're about to enjoy watching this unfold, he said. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the desk. Everything's recorded, every word, every handshake. He nodded approvingly. We'll let them proceed with the title transfer. Once they record it, we'll file a formal objection. Fraud under duress is a big deal in this state. You'll keep your share, and we'll add pressure for a settlement. Settlement? I asked. You mean money? Or leverage, he said. Depends what kind of victory you want. I leaned back in my chair. I'm not after money. I just want them to know what it feels like when everything you count on turns out to be a lie. Douglas chuckled softly. You sure you're not in my line of work? I'm just good at logistics, I said. Different kind of battlefield. When I left the office, the air smelled like rain. The sky was gray and heavy, the way it gets before a thunderstorm rolls through Georgia. I drove to the small cafe near the courthouse, ordered black coffee, and sat by the window watching people rush by with umbrellas. Everyone else was trying to stay dry. I was just waiting for the storm to hit. Later that evening, I called Mom. She sounded relieved to hear from me. Leah, honey, thank you again for signing those papers. I know it wasn't easy. Sure, I said. You happy with how it went? Oh yes. April's already found a buyer. Cliff says they'll close next week. That's quick, I said casually. He must really know what he's doing. She laughed nervously. He's been very helpful. And April's really stepped up lately. I think she's finally maturing. Yeah, I said. Something like that. When we hung up, I sat there staring at the phone again. My mother's voice sounded lighter, almost proud. It was the same tone she used when April got promoted years ago at some dead-end retail job. Blind faith was her favorite drug. I opened my notebook and turned to a clean page. Across the top, I wrote, Operation Glass House. Underneath it, 3 bullet points. 1. Collect evidence of fraud. 2. Verify April's buyer and trace payments. 3. Control the narrative before they realize I'm the one writing it. By morning, I was back on base. I pulled a favor from a tech sergeant I knew in Intel, a quiet guy named Sanders, who owed me for covering a disciplinary report years back. I didn't tell him everything, just that I needed help verifying a property transaction. He glanced at me across the desk. You're not doing anything illegal, are you, Captain? Not today, I said. Just checking a few public records faster than the public. By noon, he had it. The buyer of my family home was a shell company registered under Cliff's name. Its bank account was opened 2 weeks before the sale. Classic amateur fraud. I thanked Sanders, promised him a round of drinks, and drove to Macon that evening. April's car was in Mom's driveway again. I parked across the street, turned off the engine, and watched. The house glowed warm from the inside. Laughter drifted through the open window. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew the rhythm. April talking too loud, Mom pretending everything was fine. I waited until Cliff walked out, phone to his ear, grin plastered across his face. I followed him from a distance down the block until he got into his car, a black SUV with temporary plates, and drove off toward town. A part of me wanted to follow. Another part knew patience was better than confrontation. I'd learned that from both the Army and my sister. Whoever breaks composure first loses. The next morning, Douglas sent me a message confirming the property's sale had been recorded with the state. Everything was official now. My sister had won. I forwarded him the shell company details. His reply came minutes later. Beautiful work. We'll let them sweat a little before we file. That same day, April called me. Hey, sis, she said, voice syrupy sweet. Just wanted to say thank you again. I know this whole thing was stressful. I'll send your portion soon, maybe 25,000. Give me a week. Sure, I said. Take your time. Really? You're being so cool about it. I thought you'd freak out. Why would I said. It's just a house. She laughed a little too loudly. Exactly. You get it. Yeah, I said softly. I get it. She didn't hear the undertone. She never did. When we hung up, I took my keys and drove without a destination. Just asphalt and silence. Eventually, I found myself parked in front of Mrs. Dorothy's place again. Her porch light was on. I didn't knock, I just sat there for a minute, watching that warm little circle of light spill onto the steps. It reminded me what decency looked like, and what it cost to keep it. I went home and opened the email drafts I'd been working on. The subject line was simple. Notice of potential fraudulent transfer. Property Heshite Force Event Wu. The body included the relevant documents, signatures, and a short statement that I was disputing the sale pending review of coercion and financial manipulation. I didn't send it yet. Timing mattered. The following morning, April posted a photo online, her and Cliff holding champagne glasses in front of a sold sign. The caption read, "Fresh starts are the best starts." I stared at it long enough for my coffee to go cold. Then I saved it as evidence B. Later, I got a text from Mom. Isn't it nice to see your sister doing well? I typed, deleted, then typed again. Sure. It's nice to see honesty paying off for once. I didn't wait for a reply. That night, I met Douglas again. He looked over the new screenshots and smiled. You've got them cornered. Once we file, they'll panic. But I want you to consider one thing when this goes public, it won't just be about them. Your mother's name is on this too. I exhaled slowly. She made her choice. He nodded. Then we proceed. I left his office and drove through the quiet streets of downtown Atlanta, the city lights reflecting off the windshield like little lies pretending to be stars. At a red light, I glanced at myself in the rearview mirror and barely recognized the expression staring back, steady, sharp, almost calm. I wasn't angry anymore. I was precise. When I got home, I placed my phone face down, poured another drink, and sat in the dark. The glass left a ring on the table, a small mark that would fade overnight. That's what betrayal was like, quick to stain, slow to disappear. The house was silent, except for the hum of the fridge. Outside, thunder rolled again, low and distant. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, listening. It wasn't the storm that made me smile. It was knowing exactly where the lightning was going to strike. 2 days later, I woke up to a call from Douglas. His voice was steady, calm, but I could tell something was off. Leah, you need to come to the office, he said. We've got a small problem. I didn't ask what it was. I just got dressed, skipped breakfast, and drove to Atlanta. The streets were already shimmering with heat by the time I pulled into his building. Inside, Douglas was at his desk, staring at his laptop like it had just insulted him. Tell me it's not gone, I said. He sighed. Your recording, the one from the signing, it didn't upload to the cloud. The watch battery died halfway through. We've only got half the audio. For a moment, I didn't move. I'd spent years in situations where plans fell apart, bad intel, broken comms, weather that didn't care about strategy. But somehow, this felt worse. Half is still half, I said finally. Does it have enough? He shook his head. We have you acknowledging the deal, signing the papers, and Cliff talking about how quick it'll go through. But the part where April pressures you gone. I leaned back in the chair and let out a short laugh. You're kidding. I wish. 1. The old army instinct kicked in anger, then clarity. Panic never helped, only motion did. So what's next? We can still file the dispute, he said, but it'll be your word against theirs. Unless I find something better, I finished. He smiled faintly. Now you sound like yourself. I drove home with the windows down, the air heavy and hot. The steering wheel burned under my hands, but I didn't mind. I was already running through possibilities. April was careless, always had been. Somewhere, she'd left a trail. When I got back to my apartment, I poured a glass of water, sat down, and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second before typing Cliff Real Estate Georgia into the search bar. 10 minutes later, I found his LLC had filed for 3 separate property purchases in the past year. 1 in Savannah, 1 in Columbus, and this one, our family home. The listed consultant on the filings? April Kennedy. That was the thread I needed. I emailed Douglas the links and screenshots. He replied in less than 5 minutes. This is good, keep going. If they talked about these deals anywhere, find it. That night, I went through April's old social media posts, her favorite hobby next to lying. She loved documenting everything. Lunches, vacations, selfies in front of houses that didn't belong to her. And then I found a photo from 2 weeks ago. April and Cliff sitting in his SUV, champagne glasses raised, captioned, "Can't believe we pulled it off." I zoomed in on the car's dashboard. The time, the date, and the location tag were all visible. She'd posted the evidence herself. I sent the screenshot to Douglas. His reply, "That's our missing half." The next morning I drove to Macon. Mom's car was gone, but April's was in the driveway. I didn't knock. I walked right in. She was in the kitchen, phone in hand, mid-laugh. "Leah, you scared me. What are you doing here?" "Just dropping by," I said. "Heard you closed on the house." Her face brightened instantly. "Yep, everything went great." Mom's relieved. "You should be too." I walked over to the counter, picked up a stray document lying there. It was a printed copy of the sale confirmation. The new title owner wasn't Cliff. It was another LLC, CW Investments. "You changed the name," I said. April shrugged. Cliff said it was better for taxes. Right, I said, scanning the paper. And your name's nowhere on it. Neither is Mom's. She froze. Well, it's just temporary. It's all under control. Sure it is, I said. You always have everything under control. I set the paper down and leaned on the counter. Tell me something, April. When exactly did you decide Dad's house was your personal ATM? Her mouth tightened. Don't start with your moral crap. You signed off, Leah. You didn't care before, why now? Because I wanted to see how far you'd go. That shut her up. She blinked, realizing too late that she'd said too much. I pulled my phone from my pocket, hit record, and set it on the counter between us. Go ahead, I said. Tell me again how it's under control. She frowned, suddenly wary. What are you doing? Getting my half back, I said calmly. She tried to play it off, crossing her arms. You really think you can scare me with your little soldier routine? You're all rules and no guts. I almost smiled. You'd be surprised. She stormed off, slamming her bedroom door. I stayed where I was, staring at that confirmation letter. Then I picked it up, folded it neatly, and slipped it into my bag. On the way out, I saw something in the hallway, an open envelope on a side table. Inside was a bank statement. The account name matched CW Investments. Balance, $80,000. I took a picture, closed the envelope, and left. When I got outside, I sat in my truck, breathing slowly. I wasn't shaking. I was steady. That was how I knew I'd won. I called Douglas. I've got what we need. He listened as I explained everything, the document, the statement, the recording. When I finished, he said, That's airtight. Files going to the fraud division Monday morning. Good, I said. They wanted a lesson. This is the polite version. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked around my apartment, restless, drinking water that tasted like dust. Around midnight, I sat down with my notebook again. I crossed out Operation Glass House and wrote resolution. Underneath, one sentence. They built it on lies. Let them live in it. By morning, the email was in my drafts, ready to send to the authorities. I stared at it for a full minute before hitting send. Once it was gone, I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let out a breath I'd been holding for months. Later that day, Douglas called again. They'll be notified within the week, he said. Expect fallout. Fallout's fine, I said. I've been trained for worse. He laughed quietly. You always are. That evening, the sky turned orange as the sun dipped below the city skyline. I poured a drink, stood by the window, and watched the light shift across the buildings. Somewhere out there, April and Cliff were celebrating again, completely unaware that their little empire was already collapsing. My phone buzzed April, of course. Her text read, Mom says you've been acting weird. Everything okay? I typed back, never better. Then I put the phone down, finished my drink, and turned off the lights. The apartment fell into silence, except for the soft hum of the city outside. It wasn't peace exactly, but it was close enough for now. Because justice isn't loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. It just waits, patient and sure, until the noise dies down and truth finally takes its place. When the letter from the fraud division arrived, it was early morning, still half dark outside. I recognized the seal before I even opened it. A short paragraph, plain and official. Your claim has been reviewed. An investigation has been opened regarding the transfer of property 8,472. That was it. No drama, no fanfare, just a few lines that carried more weight than a gun. I folded the letter, slipped it into my folder, and called Douglas. It started, I said. He sounded pleased. Then it's time we invite your family for a little chat. He scheduled the meeting for Thursday. A neutral space, his downtown office, glass walls, neutral carpet, water cooler humming in the corner. Exactly the kind of quiet place where truth sounds louder. By the time Thursday came, I'd rehearsed nothing. I didn't need to. The facts spoke for themselves. Mom arrived first, wearing her church dress, hair too carefully done. She looked nervous, like someone showing up to a job interview she didn't remember applying for. April followed 10 minutes later, phone in hand, pretending she wasn't anxious. Cliff came in last, smug as ever, wearing a new blazer that didn't fit. He gave me that fake grin. Hey, Leah. Didn't expect to see you here. You never do, I said. Douglas stepped out of his office. Good. Everyone's here. Let's sit. We gathered around the table. Douglas set down a slim folder. Before we start, I want to clarify that this meeting is being documented for legal purposes. April laughed nervously. Legal purposes? That sounds serious. It is, I said, my voice flat. Douglas opened the folder. Mrs. Kennedy, Mr. Harmon, Miss Monroe, our firm represents Miss Leah Monroe regarding an ongoing property dispute. There is evidence suggesting that the sale of her late father's home was conducted under false pretenses and that the proceeds were misdirected. Mom shifted in her seat. Douglas, there must be some misunderstanding. We didn't. He raised a hand politely. Please, ma'am, let me finish. We have documentation showing that the purchasing entity, CW Investments, is owned by Mr. Harmon. We also have transaction logs connecting that account to deposits made by Mrs. Kennedy. April's smile cracked. That's ridiculous. Cliff's business is completely legitimate. End of 2. Douglas clicked the mouse, and the screen behind him lit up a projection of a spreadsheet. Account numbers, timestamps, transfers. Every number tied neatly together like threads in a web. Legitimate businesses, Douglas said calmly. Don't hide their payments under multiple shell companies created within a week of a property sale. Cliff leaned back, arms crossed. You don't have proof those belong to me. Douglas opened another document, an LLC registration form. Actually, we do. You signed this yourself. For the first time, Cliff didn't smile. April turned toward him, her voice sharp. You said you handled that legally. He muttered. I did. I just... Save it, I said, my tone low. You handled it all right. You handled it straight into an investigation. Mom's face went pale. Investigation? Douglas nodded. Yes, ma'am. The Department of Financial Regulation opened a review based on Miss Monroe's complaint. If fraud is confirmed, the property reverts to her ownership. Restitution may also be pursued. April's chair scraped the floor. You went to the state? Leah, what the hell is wrong with you? I met her eyes steady. You stole our father's house. What's wrong with me? She looked away first. Always did. Cliff muttered something under his breath, but Douglas cut in. Let me make this simple. You can cooperate and sign this new settlement agreement returning full ownership to Miss Monroe, or you can lawyer up and fight a fraud charge. The room went dead quiet. The air conditioner clicked on, filling the silence with a low hum. Mom spoke finally, her voice small. Leah, please, we can fix this as a family. You don't need to ruin your sister's life. I looked at her and almost laughed. Mom, she ruined her own life the minute she thought mine was worth selling. April's eyes filled with tears, but they were the kind that come too late, the kind people use when they realize the audience stopped caring. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said. You always mean it, I said. You just don't expect consequences. Douglas slid the papers across the table. Sign here, he said to April, and here, to Cliff. Once this is notarized, we'll submit it to the court and close the case. April hesitated, pen trembling. And if we don't? Douglas smiled politely. Then I forward the recordings, the documents, and the bank statements to the investigator assigned to your case. The penalties include restitution, fines, and possibly jail time. Cliff snatched the pen. Just sign it. She did. Slowly, reluctantly, like the ink might burn. When it was done, Douglas slid the documents toward me. Congratulations, he said quietly. It's yours again. I didn't smile. I just nodded. April's voice cracked. Are you happy now? No, I said, but I'm done. I stood up, gathering my things. Mom reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Leah, wait, she said. You don't understand. Family doesn't quit on each other. I looked at her, steady and tired all at once. You're right, but I didn't quit. You did when you decided silence was easier than honesty. Douglas opened the door, and I walked out without looking back. The hallway felt colder, quieter. My boots clicked against the tile in perfect rhythm, the sound sharp and clean. Outside, the sky was overcast again, heavy with the kind of gray that feels like it's waiting for rain but never delivers. I stood there for a minute, breathing in the air, the city noise humming in the distance. My phone buzzed a text from April. "You'll regret this. Money doesn't fix loneliness." I stared at it for a long moment before deleting it. She still didn't get it. It was never about money. It was about the difference between people who stand by you and people who stand on you. I got into my truck, pulled into traffic, and didn't look back. The highway stretched ahead, wide and open, the lines flashing by in steady rhythm. Somewhere behind me, my sister was probably crying. My mother was probably praying. Cliff was probably calling his lawyer. And me? I was just driving, steady and silent, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the envelope with my father's name on it. The world outside blurred billboards, trees, light posts. Somewhere in that blur was the house they'd tried to take, the one my father built with his hands. I thought about the last thing he'd told me before I enlisted. You can't choose the blood you come from, but you can choose the kind you spill for. At the next stoplight, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. Calm, steady, no rage left. Just a strange, quiet satisfaction that comes from doing something you never wanted to but had to. The light turned green. I pressed the gas, merging back into the flow of cars, the city receding behind me like a bad dream that finally ended. The papers sat in the passenger seat, rustling softly with the movement of the air. And for once, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The morning after the meeting, I woke up later than usual. No alarm, no uniform, no rush. Just sunlight bleeding through the blinds and the smell of rain from the night before. For a few seconds, I didn't move. It was quiet, too quiet. I wasn't used to peace feeling this heavy. On the counter sat the signed settlement papers, folded neatly beside my coffee mug. I stared at them while the coffee brewed, the hum of the machine filling the room like static. That was all it took. Half a year of patience, one calculated test, and they'd undone themselves. I didn't feel proud, just finished. When I finally checked my phone, there were 3 missed calls from Mom, one from an unknown number and a text from April that just said, "You'll never understand what it's like to struggle." I didn't reply. She was right in one way. I'd spent years struggling, but never with honesty. By noon, I was on the road toward Macon again. The drive felt different this time. The trees looked cleaner after the storm, the asphalt darker, the world less hostile. When I pulled into the old neighborhood, the for sale sign was gone from the yard. My father's house stood quiet, unbothered by the chaos it had caused. Mom's car was there. She came out onto the porch before I even got out of the truck. Her hair was messy, eyes swollen like she hadn't slept. She didn't say hello. "You really did it," she said. "You took it all back." I stepped onto the porch, the wood creaking beneath my boots. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine. She crossed her arms, hugging herself. "You embarrassed your sister. Everyone in town's talking about it. Then they're finally talking about something true." Her mouth tightened. "You think you're better than us?" "No," I said. "Just less dishonest." She looked past me toward the street, her voice lowering. "You know, when your father died, I thought you'd be the one to keep the family together." "I tried," I said, "but I was the only one who thought it was worth saving." End of 2. The silence between us stretched, awkward and sharp. I could hear the cicadas buzzing, the faint rattle of a loose shutter in the wind. "April's moving out," she said finally. "Cliff's gone. He took whatever was left in their account and vanished." I almost smiled. "Pudik." Mom frowned. "This isn't funny." "I'm not laughing," I said. "But you have to admit that's justice, with a sense of humor." She shook her head, turned toward the door. "I don't even recognize you anymore." I wanted to tell her that was the point. Instead, I just said, "That makes 2 of us," and walked back to my truck. On the drive home, I stopped at a diner off the highway, the same one where I'd first written, "Test everyone" in my notebook. The waitress recognized me. "You're the army girl," she said. "Haven't seen you in a while." "Been busy," I said. "Coffee?" "Yeah. Black." She poured it, set it down, and leaned on the counter. "You look tired." "Feels more like empty," I said. She nodded like she understood. "That's how peace feels at first." "Weird, huh?" I gave a small laugh. Weird's one word for it. The coffee was strong and bitter. It grounded me. I paid, left a generous tip, and stepped back into the sunlight. The air smelled like wet asphalt and honeysuckle. For once, it didn't smell like trouble. That evening, I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank account. The trust was still untouched, millions sitting there like a secret that had outlived its purpose. I'd proven everything I needed to. I didn't need the money to win. Still, I wanted to do something that made it mean more than revenge, something clean. So I called Douglas. I want to transfer a portion of the trust, I said. Set up a fund for women veterans. Housing, education, small business grants, quietly. He paused. You're sure? That's no small gesture. I'm sure, I said. Call it restitution if you want. I call it balance. He chuckled softly. You always did like that word. I hung up and stared out the window for a long time. The sky was clear again, the city lights faint against the fading Sunday. Somewhere out there, April was probably figuring out how to rebuild her mess or how to find someone else to fix it for her. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done carrying the weight of their lessons. Later that night, I got another text, this time from Mom. Money won't buy you family, Leah. I typed back before I could overthink it. You're right, but it can build one. Then I set the phone down, closed the blinds, and started drafting the charter for the foundation. I named it the Valor Sisterhood Fund. It sounded a little dramatic, but I liked the irony. The word sisterhood finally meant something again. The next few weeks passed quietly. The investigation wrapped up. April signed a formal admission of wrongdoing to avoid further penalties. Cliff disappeared entirely, maybe to Florida or maybe to whatever corner of the map swallows people who burn every bridge they cross. Mom kept to herself. She stopped calling. I didn't chase her. Work felt different too. The Army has a way of grounding you when life outside starts spinning. My CO noticed the change. You've been calm lately, he said. Guess I ran out of things to fight, I told him. He smiled. That's dangerous. You'll start enjoying the quiet. I'll take my chances. And one afternoon, I drove back to see Mrs. Dorothy. Her porch was still cluttered with flower pots and wind chimes that never stopped tinkling. She smiled the moment she saw me. My soldier girl, she said. You look lighter. I should. I dropped a few 100 pounds of family baggage. She laughed. Good riddance. Sit down. I made sweet tea. We sat for a while, talking about nothing in particular, her neighbor's dog, the weather, the new grocery store. When I handed her a folded check, she frowned. What's this? For you, I said. To help fix the roof, or whatever else you want. She unfolded it, eyes widening. Lord, Leah, this is too much. It's not enough, I said. You're the reason I remembered what real kindness looks like. She looked at me for a long moment, then smiled softly. You found your way back, huh? Something like that. As the sun dipped low, I helped her move a few boxes from the porch into the house. She shuffled slowly beside me, humming a tune I half remembered from childhood. For the first time in months, I felt a quiet kind of warmth, not excitement, not relief, just steadiness. When I left, she hugged me tight, her voice muffled against my shoulder. Don't be a stranger. I won't, I said. On the drive home, I rolled down the windows. The wind was cool, the road empty, and for the first time since I'd test everyone into that notebook, I didn't feel like I had anything left to prove. The headlights carved a straight path ahead, and I followed it without looking back. Some debts, I'd learned, aren't meant to be repaid. They're meant to be understood. And once you do, you finally stop carrying them. The day the foundation's paperwork was finalized, I was sitting in my kitchen with a cup of black coffee and a stack of emails from Douglas. It was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the sound of rain starting against the window. The world had gone back to its usual rhythm, but I hadn't yet. There's always a strange stillness after a fight, not peace exactly, more like your body waiting for the next hit that doesn't come. I scrolled through the legal documents, every line clean and final. The Valor Sisterhood Fund was official. The first grants would go to 3 women veterans, one starting a mechanic shop in Texas, another finishing her nursing degree, and one still recovering from deployment injuries who just needed a stable place to live. For once, the money was doing something that didn't make me feel like I was paying a debt. Douglas called while I was reviewing the forms. It's all set, he said. The fun's active. You did good with this one, Leah. I smiled faintly. Good's not usually the word people use for me. Well, let's start changing that, he said. You want me to handle the press side? No press, I said. Just let it work quietly. That's very you, he said with a laugh. Anonymous revenge turned anonymous charity. It's called balance, I said. After the call, I drove to the base. The sky was gray again, the air thick with humidity. Routine felt comfortable now, the sound of boots on gravel, the steady rhythm of morning drills, the small talk that didn't require emotional investment. My unit didn't know anything about what had happened. They didn't need to. The Army teaches you to compartmentalize, and I'd gotten very good at it. At lunch, I sat outside near the training field, eating a sandwich and watching the younger recruits run laps. One of them, a tall kid from Louisiana, stumbled and fell, cursing under his breath. His squad leader stopped, helped him up, and kept running beside him. That small act, simple, instinctive, hit me harder than I expected. Loyalty in motion. No contracts, no family ties, no promises, just people who show up because they said they would. That night, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." It was from April. The message was short. She said she'd been staying with a friend in Savannah, that Cliff had drained what was left of their money and disappeared. She said Mom wasn't speaking to her. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, just wanted me to know she understood now what I'd been trying to prove. I stared at it for a long time. My first instinct was to delete it. But I didn't. Instead, I replied, "I believe you're sorry. I just don't trust you yet. Take care of yourself." Then I closed the laptop and turned off the lights. That was enough for one night. A week later, I took leave from base and drove back to the house. The paint was still peeling, but the porch looked less sad now that the weeds had been trimmed. I had the deed in my glove compartment, officially in my name again. I could have sold it, rented it, torn it down, but instead, I stood there on that porch and realized I wanted to keep it. Not as a reminder of the mess, but as proof of endurance. Inside, the place smelled like dust and old wood. The furniture was still covered with white sheets. I walked from room to room, touching the walls, running my fingers along the marks my dad made when he measured our heights as kids. Mine stopped at 5'8". April's line was right beside it. I ran my thumb over her name until it faded a little. I didn't feel anger anymore, just quiet acceptance. People break in different ways, and not everyone knows how to rebuild. I spent the afternoon cleaning, opened the windows, let the air move through. I found one of Dad's old boxes in the attic, rusted nails, a few photos, his Army insignia from the 70s. There was a note in his handwriting: "Always pay your debts, but never with bitterness." I stood there for a long time, the sound of rain tapping on the roof, wondering if maybe he'd already known how this story would go. Later that week, I met up with Mike, my old unit buddy, who'd helped me when I was testing everyone. We met at a bar just off the highway, the kind with sticky floors and a jukebox that only played country songs from before we were born. He grinned when he saw me. "Heard you went and became a philanthropist." I laughed. "You make it sound like a diagnosis." He raised his beer. "To better causes and fewer idiots." We clinked glasses. It felt easy. No tension, no pretense. Just two people who'd seen the worst of human nature and somehow didn't let it rot them completely. When I told him about the foundation, he nodded. "That's solid, Monroe. Feels right for you." "Yeah," I said. "Feels like something I didn't mess up." He smirked. "Don't get soft on me now." "Too late," I said. "I'm house shopping for compassion." He laughed. "Careful, it's overpriced." We talked until closing, then stepped outside into the cool night air. He gave me a hug before heading to his truck. "You ever need backup again," he said, "you know where to find me." "I'll hold you to that," I said. Driving home, the world felt strangely balanced again. Not perfect, just level. I wasn't the same woman who'd tested her family to see who cared. That version of me had needed proof. This one didn't. When I got home, there was another message waiting on my phone, this time from Mom. "Your sister's trying. Maybe you could talk to her." 1. I stared at it for a long time. Forgiveness wasn't something you decide once. It's a slow kind of rebuilding, like clearing land after a storm. You start by removing what's broken, piece by piece, until something new can stand in its place. So I called April. She picked up after the second ring. Hello? Her voice was small, careful. Hey, I said. Mom says you're trying. I am, she said quietly. I'm working at a clinic. It's not much, but it's honest. I'm sorry, Leah. I really am. How wet. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I said, you should keep at it. Does that mean you forgive me? She asked. It means I don't hate you, I said. That's a start. She didn't cry this time. She just said, thank you, and hung up. After the call, I stepped out onto my balcony. The rain had stopped, and the air smelled like wet concrete and new beginnings. Down below, the streetlights buzzed softly, throwing long shadows across the pavement. I thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the tests, the revenge, the aftermath. It was ugly and human and real. But somehow, out of all that, something cleaner had grown. I went back inside, turned off the lamp, and sat in the dark with my coffee going cold. I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. The tests were over. The war was done. In the quiet, I thought of my father's old saying again. You can't choose the blood you come from, but you can choose the kind you spill for. I smiled to myself. For the first time in years, I knew exactly which kind that was. The storm had passed. The silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt like home.